Trust is everything, and it's hard because increasingly trust in
Yeah.
institutions is waning. It's been on a decline for decades, and news and media have been sort of the worst,
Yep.
taken one of the worst hits among the institutions that have lost trust. People really trust individuals. Actually, trust in individuals has gone up. And so one of the things we think about in marketing a lot is how do we bring forward the humans of the New York Times?
On today's episode, we are welcomed by Amy Weisenbach. Amy is the Chief Marketing Officer at none other than the New York Times, where she has led a modern evolution of one of the most iconic brands in journalism, without compromising its legacy of truth, integrity, and independence. With more than 2 decades of experience across global consumer brands, Amy has built a career defined by storytelling, not just to sell, but to spark connection. Under her leadership, The Times has launched award-winning campaigns like The Truth is Worth It and Independent Journalism for an Independent Life, each one a powerful reminder of why facts matter. Amy is also a professor, leading students and the next generation of marketers to dive deep into brand strategy and the power of truly understanding who you are and the problem that you want to solve out into the world. This is a masterclass in understanding how you can, 1, build your own career, and 2, build your brand story. Welcome, Amy, to the Fahrenheit podcast.
You know, it's funny. It's very rare that I fangirl in the world of marketing. But I think, one, as both a professor at NYU, but also in your current role as a CMO at the New York Times, you've had such like a storied career and really made such a mark for yourself. And so as one marketer to another, I'm really excited to talk to you today. And I think really first and foremost, dig into the world of brand and how you see it, but also I think how you teach it, which is a big passion of mine and something that I think has made me want to lead, right? So whether it's students or employees, leading has been like the core of what drives me every day. And so you're genuinely doing it, actually doing it in real life. And so I'm just so excited to talk to you today and to dig into really the world of brand.
Thanks. And likewise, I got to get to know your background and getting ready for today and just was so impressed with the stuff you've done.
Thank you.
We're sort of knee deep in figuring out social for our brand. And so on the side, I have 10 questions for you.
The door is open, whatever you need. Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting. Speaking of, something I've really learned as I've gotten older in my career is marketers really come into the leadership roles through their different lanes. So for me, that was social. You know, when I actually, after NYU, after graduating from grad school, I was just this sort of jack of all trades creative. And when social media happened in the early 2000s, I just grabbed at the gold and I said, let me try this. And so social media became the avenue by which I learned how to market. And so my background, you know, now as sort of like both the leader of an agency, but in that sort of leadership role as as a marketer, social is the first line of defense, I would say, in terms of how I grew and how I built. What was your first line of defense? Tell me how you became a marketer, in a leadership role.
Well, I started my career not in marketing, but in the nonprofit world. I was, I guess you might say, like a social entrepreneur. And I went to business school thinking I was totally coming back to the nonprofit world. And I happened to have an amazing marketing professor my first year, Gail McGovern. She had just come off of being the CEO of Fidelity. And I just was it sparked, something in me. And I thought, well, I'm in business school. Maybe I should do a business internship this summer. And somehow I managed to convince Gillette to hire me. And I worked on Duracell batteries. And I really thought I was going to hate it. And I remember my boss saying she thought I wasn't going to be any good at it because I didn't have any marketing experience. And lo and behold, I was good at it and I liked it. And so that was really, for me, the entry. It's like the door is open. If I walk through it today, I can maybe get a job. If I close the store, no one's going to care about my 8 weeks of marketing experience.
Yeah.
And I happened to land a job on this new little brand that Unilever had just launched, Axe body spray.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
From Duracell to Axe body spray, what was sort of the big shift? And I think something in your career that's pretty obvious is you've really hopped from category to category, right? You've gone from consumer to CPG to media. How, has your marketing and what you see as the way in which you market evolved from category to category?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've learned is that I can get excited about just about anything.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
When I start to understand the humans behind a category and what their needs are. And so even though the categories I've worked in have been so different and varied, at the heart of each of them is a consumer problem that needs to be solved and like an emotional human space. And it's funny, as different as they are, there's some things that are really the same, right? Like I could probably boil them all down to confidence, right? Axe was about confidence in attracting women. Trunk Club was about confidence in dressing oneself.
Yep.
Spirits is about confidence in social situations. Wilson is about giving athletes confidence on the playing field in the clutch moments. And the New York Times is about confidence that you can make sense of the world and get the most out of life. And so very different consumers, targets, very different storytelling, but at the heart of them is humans and a brand playing, hopefully, a valuable role in their lives.
I went to Tisch School of the Arts at NYU, and I, was there for TV and film, and it was like I was really just deep in arts, and I wasn't sure the forum by which I was going to really kind of bring that to life in my career. It wasn't clear to me at the time. So by the time I became a marketer, which really was through the world of social, I had kind of figured out my way of tapping into emotion was at first through creative. It was like, how do you evoke an emotion and how do you connect to that? And I think something in the world of marketing you really learn is marketing is so much about psychology. And it's funny, I always joke that if I'm going to go back and get a PhD, it's going to be like in philosophy, psychology, anthropology, because like that is really where like the root of that human emotion sits. You talked a little bit about the problems that we need to solve. Talk a little bit about the problem that you are trying to solve for at the New York Times.
Yeah. Well, our consumer target we call the curious. It's a psychographic, not a demographic. And people are really looking to kind of make sense of the world and also find a way to make their best way in the world. And they tend to have a number of things in common: a curiosity about other cultures, about what's happening in the world, a real desire to sort of use their time productively. And so for us, each of our products sort of solve for that in a different way. Obviously, news being at the core, is sort of the most fundamental kind of heavy, serious version of that. But then we have, lots of things, even in the news report, that are more about culture and lifestyle and criticism and things that are super fun. Our wellness coverage is one of the real bright spots of engagement. And actually, we have our first Well Festival this week on Thursday, which is a new event that we're hosting. And then we have all of our like lifestyle kind of passion products. So cooking, games, shopping advice through.
Yeah, and in your role as CMO, you're not just leading news. You're also leading everything.
Yeah.
So, crosswords, everything, all the different categories. Yeah. How do you really think about leading that sort of idea of confidence, right? Like you said, like confidence in understanding the world around you. How do you lead that through all these very disparate and very different products?
Yeah. Well, they have a lot in common. I think at the core of how we show up in each of those categories is like high quality, human created content, which is is valuable today, and I suspect will become even more valuable moving forward. Not everyone's in the market for all of our products, but our research shows that like consumers tend to be in the market for news and at least one of our other sub-brands. So we tend to see the news being a great front door to the whole New York Times. And sometimes people come for news but stay for Wordle or stay to read about the NFL draft on The Athletic or something like that. But the other products also are a nice front door for people who maybe don't know the New York Times as well. And so we certainly see a pathway from people who come to play our games and then stay for news.
Yeah, I imagine trust has to be just so important, right? It's like not just about creating confidence, but also trust with your readers, with your audience, with the consumers of the different products.
Yeah.
How does that impact how you make decisions as the head of marketing?
I mean, trust is everything, and it's hard because increasingly trust in institutions is waning. It's been on a decline for decades, and news and media have been sort of the worst, taken one of the worst hits among the institutions that have lost trust. One thing that we have seen is that people really trust individuals. Actually, trust in individuals has gone up. And so one of the things we think about in marketing a lot is how do we bring forward the humans of the New York Times, right? They're real people over, all the people that are involved in reporting and editing and creating all the beautiful immersive journalism that the Times creates. And so a lot of what we do is help those reporters tell their story in a way that they don't sort of naturally do within the reporting itself.
That makes so much sense because also when you're really putting that human front and center, you're really giving a voice to the idea, to the theory, to the news that allows us to, really touch and feel and have a visceral connection, if you will, to the person who's behind it.
Well, and we know that consumers just don't understand how journalism gets made. They truly don't know the difference between what they see on TV that's more like people reading the news from podcasts and which is a type of journalism, an important type of journalism. There's a ton of opinion journalism online that doesn't ever get labeled opinion journalism. And then there's what we do, which is like independent on the ground reporting. And it's a bit different, but it's harder to explain. And so that's not what they see. You don't see the reporting, you see the outcome.
You see the output.
So a big part of what we see as our job in marketing is helping to tell those stories about the rigor and the process of the reporting.
There's also social media, which is now this completely sort of alternative and opposite form where, it's hard to navigate in the world today of like what is real and what is not, and what is fact and what is fiction, and what is true and what is false. And so I imagine more than ever that trust is even becoming increasingly important for consumers who, to your point, don't know how the news gets made. And how have you really thought about, and I know that you've been really instrumental in so many of the New York Times most recent campaigns and really bringing it to the consumer. So how are you ensuring that consumers do understand that differentiator, that factor that makes the New York Times the New York Times?
Yeah, well, I've been at the Times now 8 years, and I joined the Times to really help build out our brand marketing practice. I now lead everything across the full funnel.
No big deal.
But I started with really trying to build out brand marketing kind of on top of what at the time was a strong performance marketing practice. And at the beginning, it was really like finding our way and our footing and how to tell these stories, because even though the Times has been around for over 170 years and of course has done marketing before, no one had really tried to tell those stories about how the reporting gets done. And so some of our first campaigns, The Truth is Worth It, is one that comes to mind, where we really worked hand in hand with reporters to help them tell their story. And we had them, it was uncomfortable for them at first to sort of open up their reporter's notebook, show us their artifacts. They shared with us pictures from their phones that they had sent their spouse or that they had just taken for themselves, as well as obviously all the journalistic artifacts from the actual story, the photojournalism, the writing, the story, and the headline itself. And we found a way, I think, to tell that rigor story in a way that, of course, was really magical for that campaign, but really laid the groundwork for all the stuff we've done since, which I would define more as like a steady drumbeat of storytelling. So whether that's through our My NY Times social handle, which my team runs, or we have a new games handle that we just launched, which sounds crazy that we're just figuring out social media for this brand. But our social handles are run by the newsroom. They're publishing handles. And so to tell these more behind-the-scenes stories, we had to find a place to do it, because it doesn't make sense to just stick it in the middle of the journalism. That's not what consumers want, but we thought there would be an appetite for it. So I don't know if you ever listened to any of our podcasts, The Daily, but all the ads you hear there of journalists talking about their reporting and the important role that subscribers play in making it possible, like that was sort of born out of that process of finding our storytelling footing, I guess.
What is your process for finding that story, that campaign opportunity? Like, how do you think about taking that brand strategy, taking the insights that you might have, and then translating it into campaigns that realistically are going to reach millions of people?
I would say it's a triangulation. We, of
Mhm.
course, start with a strategy
Yeah.
and a messaging strategy of what are the things that we think our readers need to hear in order to be willing to believe that journalism is worth paying for, and to pay for a subscription. Because at the end of the day, that's a big part of our job,
Yeah.
is driving that willingness to pay. So what are the things we want? So we're always on the lookout for stories that we think will help communicate those things. But then also the journalism just sparks ideas. I remember when I was sitting in like an all company meeting when the journalists who broke the Harvey Weinstein story and that started the Me Too movement were talking about their reporting. I looked at my colleague next to me and we locked eyes and we're like, oh my gosh, we have to tell
Yeah, you're
this
like, this
story.
is it.
And that happens like 5 times a week. Or, if we could actually read everything the Times publishes every day, it probably would happen 100 times a day.
Mhm.
But obviously, we sort of look for the stuff that kind of rises to the top and kind of takes off in culture, or where there's a particularly interesting story. We also bug the team that works on our like Pulitzer Prize submissions a lot, and because they also
Good
are
plug.
on the lookout
Yeah.
for like what's the best of and the most important journalism coming out of the Times, and they've always got great stories to tell too. And
Amazing.
it's Pulitzer Day
Yeah.
today.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Amazing. Lots going on at the Times then.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
Never,
here.
never a dull moment.
As a leader of marketing at the Times, but then also as a professor, what are the different ways that you guide and teach the different students that you have in how to lead brand strategy?
It's funny. My team at work has started teasing me about the fact that I'm teaching,
Have they?
and in a good way, like
Yeah.
a positive way. The women on my team, she's like, Professor Amy's here.
I'm going to
She's like,
introduce
"I
you
love
on
it
this
when you-"
podcast as Professor
I
Amy.
know.
Yeah.
She's like, I love it when you go into professor mode. She's particular. This is a woman who leads our marketing operations. She's new to the world of marketing. And so it's been really fun, sort of. She's got such great expertise in employee engagement and org design and team building. So of course, and I mean with her, but we have a large team and lots of young people that are newer in their career. So I love when I get a chance to sort of teach or help connect the dots for people. I think a lot about leading is providing context.
Me
Which is
too.
a lot like teaching.
My team literally, we do a Fahrenheit offsite every year. And our first year, my team had these like neon signs made that said context, context, context to make fun of me.
Yeah.
And we're just holding them in the air like cheerleaders because it's like the word I say probably the most. It's everything.
I mean, it's
how
You
everything.
can make such better decisions. You just see the world differently when you have context. So I think of my first and foremost job as a leader of our marketing team is providing context, because not everyone has access to it either.
No.
The further down in the organization.
And I think also until you're really trained in it, like after decades of being in marketing or in brand, you're so used to telling the story that it becomes more second nature of you to like what I think of as connect the dots.
Yeah.
Right? Like how that insight might impact that team and that decision making and then that customer. And then how does that impact the way we're going to approach the campaign, and why do I need it 1 week earlier than I thought I did? Like all of those pieces of the puzzle are so critical, I think, in not only allowing people to operate at their best, but I think also allowing teams to work in a more transparent and open way. Context is everything.
Yeah. And I guess for teaching, it's not really that different, especially as a practitioner teacher. My students have amazing PhD tenured professors who are doing research and can provide a different level of kind of instruction than I can. And so I think of what I can uniquely do is bring them artifacts from the real world. So of course we cover the brand strategy or consumer behavior concepts that are in the textbook, and you've got to learn the basic vocabulary of the business. But most of my time I don't spend lecturing on those concepts or frameworks. I bring artifacts from across my career and bring those in. And sometimes I'll bring a deck as is.
Yeah.
I won't even touch it. And I'll say, this is the deck we presented. And then I can help them understand, well, why this slide was in there. Or why
Do you have a favorite artifact?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
This is me trying to be in your class during this podcast.
I know. My favorite thing to talk about, and it's so old, I can sort of see their eyes glaze over when I try to tell the story, is the story behind the launch of Axe Hair Care.
Mm-hmm.
I still, to this day, it's probably the most fun I've ever had in my career. I got to work on it from sort of a blank sheet of paper all the way through to the first, like, a year and a half into the launch, and worked on the product development, the innovation, the marketing, just everything, the whole thing. Sold it into Target, Walmart.
And at a stage where your mind and your experience was also a blank canvas. Like the product was blank, but so was you.
It was amazing. And so I love telling that story because it's such a great case study in strategic alignment. We did a lot of things a really specific way because of what we learned from the consumer research. And so I love to tell that story, but it's getting kind of old now.
How do you rate? The old stories are the best ones, by the way. You know, I feel like for me, when I really transitioned from being like a social media creative to a marketing, a marketing team member, marketing employee, was when I was at Michael Kors. And I look back on that time now with so much fondness because I had nothing to lose and I had everything to gain. And I think that as you, become more senior in your career, you're so much more responsible. You know, you have a lot of responsibility. I don't know if you feel the weight of that responsibility and if that's hard, but you're so responsible not only for your team, but the success of the New York Times, this incredible storied brand and company. When you're really young in your career as a marketer, you can take so many risks. You know, you are not at that level of responsibility yet. You haven't learned all the things you should and shouldn't do. Like, that is the time I think that I really challenge my team to be like, think outside of the box. Come to me with nuts ideas. Like, this is the moment. Have you ever had anything pushed through that you felt like was a crazy idea now looking back in retrospect?
Well, I'm going to talk about Axe Hair.
Okay, no, lay it on me. We love Axe.
But so one of the things, we were really nervous when we went to create Axe Hair because they sort of gave us this, they put 4 of us on this little tiger team, 2 of us who'd worked on Axe, 2 had worked on hair care, and basically said, figure out what Axe looks like in hair care. And Unilever at the time didn't have any men's hair care. So it was, we had very little, nothing to start with other than our expertise on the brand and the category. When we first started talking, and then they said, oh, and by the way, no one's ever been successful with men's hair care. Pantene's tried it. Suave's tried it.
Perfect.
No one, so good luck. And when we started talking to guys about their hair, they really were completely satisfied with whatever they were using, which was a bar of soap sometimes, whatever was in the shower.
Like an apathetic
They just
category.
did not have any dissatisfaction with that. They were not on the lookout for there was no like need to solve. We were kind of panicked. And so we went and talked to women and realized that, women aren't satisfied with men's hair. Women are quite disappointed with some of the mistakes guys are making on their hair. And then we went and showed that to guys. And suddenly they were like, oh, this matters. I didn't think my hair, what my hair looked like mattered. And so one of the biggest things that women told us they didn't like was when guys had crunchy, kind of gelled hair. And that was a big look at the time. And it was like 70% of the styling market. And we said, we're not going to launch a gel. And I remember going to sell that in to the head of North America and thinking, they're going to make us. They're going to make us sell a gel.
Totally. Yeah.
And somehow we got that through.
Context. Context and conviction. I think the 2 most powerful things you can have as a brand leader.
We were like, we can't tell guys they're going to get girl-approved hair, which is what we called the positioning, and give them a product
works still today. You know, that's the big question. You're a professor, right? So you're grading things all the time. But like, what do you think makes for a good or a bad brand strategy?
Clarity is first and foremost. And I really think strategy is the art of sacrifice. And I think back to, I remember getting my first sort of marketing midterm back, and the thing that my professor wrote on my paper was, you have to make sharper choices. You can't, brands fail when they try to be everything to everyone. And I feel like that's the mistake I see the most with students who are new to marketing and brand strategy. But to be honest, I see it all the time in the corporate world where you want to have it all. And so you want to, why do we have to choose which consumer target to go after? Why do we have to position it one way and not the other? Can't we position the brand this way here and this way to this other audience? And And of course, personalization plays a role, but no, at the core, you can only have one brand essence,
Yeah.
one sort of brand impression in the world. And that the more singular, the sharper that is. So
Yeah.
that's really what I try to preach, I guess, both
Yeah.
at work and
And as a
to my
teacher,
students.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we build brands at Fahrenheit, one thing that I've learned over time that I didn't do when I was younger, but I do now, is that I do them in stages. And part of the reason I build the brand strategy in stages and in phases is because it allows me to get closer and closer to what I call the center of the Tootsie Pop, and it's sort of like we're,
Yeah.
getting closer and closer with every step because we are in a continuous debate and dialogue around that aperture closing in.
Mhm.
And it's funny because you would think in a way that the tighter the brand gets, the more disciplined the brand gets, the more confined you are. But I actually find the freer you are,
Mhm.
because once you really understand that arrow, where you are pointing that arrow, you have the freedom then to create
Yeah.
within that framework. And that is the most powerful. For me, I couldn't agree with you more. Building a really strong brand is actually the art of saying no more than it is the art of saying yes. And that discipline is so challenging.
Mhm.
Do you find that when you are speaking to such a wide audience as the New York Times, and to your point, the psychographic that you lean into, that you're often having to make those no decisions, even though really you probably have one of the broadest audiences in the world?
Yeah.
How do you balance that, the saying no with meeting the needs and the demands of the wide range of audience and readers that you guys have?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a recent example
Of a no?
of where
Yeah.
where we've said no, but certainly it comes up all the time. Especially, a brand like ours where everyone, I've worked on houses of brands where you've got at Unilever, you've got dozens,
Yeah.
hundreds of brands, and then a branded house like the New York Times.
Yeah.
And the challenge of running marketing in a branded house is that everyone thinks that that they have a right to have an opinion, and they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, of course.
But then the pool of stakeholders, the pool of people who think about the brand and who have a say in it and want to have a say in it is giant. And so there are inbound ideas all the time, kind of nonstop. And so a lot of it is knowing which ones to sort of chase and go after and fit, and which ones don't. That comes up a lot with partnerships for us.
I'm
because
sure.
we're subscription first, but we're multi-revenue stream. And so, our advertising, I don't work on our B2B marketing, but our advertising team has all of their ad clients, and they're trying to do what's right for their ad client. And oftentimes that's at the intersection of our brand. And so finding the right opportunities that really are a bullseye for our brand and for the advertiser's brand is where the real magic happens. But those are few and far between. We have one right now, which is Instacart. Instacart, we worked with Instacart to build out a product feature in the cooking app where you can actually add a recipe's ingredients right to your Instacart grocery shopping bag and have the ingredients delivered straight to you. And that's great because it fits with Instacart's brand, which they really want to win in groceries and convenience and be easy. They want quality is a really big thing because the stakes are high of like if you're ordering ingredients for a recipe and you've got produce. And so that's what they care about. This pays that off. And for us, it's about we want to communicate that we're easy to find and easy to make. And so what better way than to have groceries at your doorstep in 30 minutes followed by a really easy to navigate recipe.
Sometimes the best brand partnerships are honestly the most obvious ones.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite hard, I think, in the day-to-day to always just allow yourself to find the simplicity of that, and really just in some ways give the consumers and audience what they want.
Yeah.
It sounds like for you, you are someone who's so naturally, even just hearing you talk, you're someone who so naturally connects the dots between the insight, the opportunity, the problem, the audience. Has there been a part of marketing, and certainly being a marketing leader, that has been more of a challenge for you?
Well, it's certainly been a challenge finding our way at the Times for this brand because a lot of the easy go-tos as a marketer, the channels that are core for most brands. I mean, think about influencer marketing, for
Right.
example. I mean, for many brands, that's the beginning, middle, and end of their marketing strategy.
Yeah, certainly.
And for us, a brand that's built on trust and transparency, the idea of paying someone to endorse our brand doesn't sit right. So we've really had to carefully find our way into how to work with creators in a way that's equitable to the creator. Of course, we're going to pay people for the work they do, but also the transparency and brand safety concerns of not sort of making it look like they're just saying it because we paid them. So we found the right constraints for us in how to do that, but that took a while. Even something as simple as like earned media activations for us took a while to kind of find our way into, partially because when we want media coverage, we're essentially asking our competitors to cover us.
Yeah.
So it's got to be really compelling because they can find lots of excuses why they don't want to write about it. Luckily, when you have something like Wordle or Connections, they can't help but want to talk about it.
You have to create cultural relevancy. And I know something that you've really worked towards in, a lot of the marketing rebirth over the last couple of years for the New York Times has been really retaining that cultural relevance. But then, for example, you have something like influencer as a marketer is the most culturally probably relevant way outside of maybe AI and the work that's happening in AI to connect with audiences. So how do you think about the balance between building this storied brand with this trust and credibility, but also being a culturally relevant media brand organization?
Well, we say no to a lot of things and we leave a lot of work on the cutting room floor. I'm really big on prototyping. I love whenever there's tension and we can't decide whether we should or shouldn't make something, I'm always like, let's prototype it. And
so what does that mean? Give me an example.
So social is a great example. So for years, we had been, trying to get the editorial team that runs our social handles to sometimes we would make something in marketing. We'd be like, can you put this on the handle? And it was always kind of underwhelming because they just had other priorities. Their job was to bring the news to our audience, not tell this marketing message. They're just gold on
the negotiation,
a different thing. But we were like, but there's all these stories that we want to tell. And so we finally just decided to prototype a new handle. So we created a new Instagram and TikTok handle called My NY Times. It's been a playground really for us to do brand storytelling that is relevant for us, right? It's not it doesn't mean jumping on every little kind of thing that happens in culture because that's not going to be right for our brand.
That's the no.
What it's done is a few things. One, we see things happening in the report now that we know that we sort of seeded, that some of the storytelling we did, we're seeing sort of show up in more organic ways in the journalism or in the social videos that the editorial team is making. And it also built the credibility for my team with our games editorial team that we could partner on content for a new games handle, which we just launched on Instagram a couple months ago. It's like success begets success. And so as we try it, you see how it feels. And when it goes really well, then you want to do more of it. And so the games it's just mine. I knew there was an unmet demand in social because we see how much readers and users of the game, players of the games are talking about the brand, but it's been wild. We only have like 30,000 followers on the handle because it's like 8 weeks old. We had 47,000 shares on a video.
It's a sticky category. And you're right, where it's like when you feel it and you sense that the audience is craving something, you kind of figure out how you give it to them. And how do you do it in a way that's on brand and that makes sense for the organization and makes sense for the resources that you have, but how do you still deliver as a marketer on those needs? And it's interesting because I say social is the first line of defense because you're getting day-to-day constant consumer feedback. When I used to work for Michael Kors, I used to walk into the office when I wanted to create influence and I wanted to convince God knows what. I wanted to convince anyone to give me budget, resources, a new employee. And I would say I'm not speaking on behalf of me, but I'm speaking on behalf of the 4 million fans that I talk to every day. And the truth was I was, and that's when community management plays such a key role in the overall marketing mix.
Yeah, it's really
as well.
convincing.
What's next for you? You're obviously sort of like thinking about these new channels, you're prototyping things, you're saying no to things. What's next for you, and what's on your radar in the world of brand and bringing brand to life for audiences?
Yeah, I would say like in the early days, we were really focused on more singular kind of brand campaigns to really establish our kind of voice as a brand. And now I would say we're more focused on this steady drumbeat of storytelling. There's just so much happening all the time in any given week across the portfolio of products, new features, wholesale new products, really interesting franchises coming out of the newsroom, new and interesting journalism. And so new games, and all of that stuff is on the horizon over the next year and plus and out into the future. And so we're really thinking of our role now and moving forward as how do we amplify that kind of drumbeat of storytelling that's naturally coming out of our product teams and the newsrooms, but then how do we find the big ones and really go big on them? The most recent example was around the NFL draft. The Athletic has this big franchise called the Beast, which is literally a beast. It's like a 500+ page book with every draft prospect and all this great storytelling.
Oh, what a good gift.
We pointed the whole organization's resources at that. So not just how do we tell this in our normal marketing channels, but how do we make sure that Dane Brugler, who's the author and the journalist main journalist behind The Beast, that he's on every podcast and sports show known to man over that 2-week period. How do we make sure that within the product itself, you can find it easily and that we've got the right push notifications? And so we've really been partnering increasingly with product, with editorial, comms, with all of our cross-functional partners across the org to say, how do we point all these resources at one big thing at a time?
One big thing at a time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I feel like I could keep talking for like 3 more hours. It's really, really so interesting, and also very similar in how we think about, I think, marketing and brand, which is really unique in a sense. Like, I think being a storyteller first, back to the avenue or the lane in which you come into marketing. I think today it's so different. My old boss came in straight through PR. One of my best friends came in through paid. I don't think that there's a storytelling first mentality in all of the marketing leaders of today. And I think probably for a media company, that's just so important.
I think marketers have gotten afraid of the words brand and storytelling because it starts to feel soft. And one of the things I really tried to impress on my students was that brand strategy is business strategy.
Yeah.
And brand marketing is business driving and growth driving. And I just think we've got to make people believe that again.
No question. When we do brand strategy, I often will tell the client or the partner in the beginning, there is like a dog wagging the tail situation that could happen. Once we get into brand strategy, there might be product implications. There might be positioning implications. There might be other functions of the business where we have to change things.
Yeah.
Pricing implications, because it is business strategy. And then there are times where the business strategy informs brand, but they should be working in tandem.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I do think that I have this saying, you should be able to pick up an asset from the cutting room floor and know it's the brand that you're working for, because there should be such a fine point on how you're looking at that brand that directly correlates to the business strategy. They're like a penny of the different sides of the penny. Really fascinating to hear about it from a media perspective, and also to see in some ways how not so different it is.
It's not different.
When you're looking at like an Axe or Unilever or Duracell, right? Like they're all similar in that way. Yeah. So marketing is universal.
Yeah. Humans at the core.
Yeah, humans at the core.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fahrenheit podcast. If you loved this episode, learned something new, or made you think differently, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. See you next time.